If you are looking to make the perfect sourdough bread, then you have clicked on the wrong video. My name is Aileen, and this past week I made my first sourdough bread and I was actually really proud of it. So I figured I'm gonna make it again and I'm gonna walk you through the steps of what I did. Now there is a lot of information that's out there and a lot of resources for making sourdough bread. I'll share with you just the steps that I did, but I definitely recommend doing your research and just using this video as maybe a resource into a beginner's approach on making sourdough bread. A lot of the videos that I saw and a lot of the research that I did are from experts, people who have been making sourdough bread for a very long time and they've tried different approaches. So again, this is only my second time making it. Earlier this morning at around, I want to say 7:45 or 8 a.m., I fed my sourdough starter. My sourdough starter, her name is Louise. I got her off of Etsy. I will link in the description the seller that I bought her off of, but honestly, this is an amazing starter. I got the inspiration to make my own sourdough bread from my friend who made her own, and I tried it and it was so good. I'm all about fueling my body with whole and natural foods, so I figured I don't really eat bread that often, but when I'm craving avocado toast, I obviously need toast, so I figured I'll make it from home and that will be just the most natural approach that I can find. This starter, I did buy it non-dehydrated. So a lot of the times they will send a dehydrated packet, which I do have. The seller actually included a dehydrated packet, so I can show you what it looks like. And the great thing about this seller as well is she also included a recipe and a lot of information within the order, which I found really helpful. I was going to use another recipe when I made the sourdough, but I decided to use hers because it was part of her starter and it worked out great. So this is the dehydrated starter. Again, she included this extra. I didn't need to use it, so I'm going to be giving it to my mom. And within this dehydrated starter, she also sent all the instructions on everything that you need to do in order to get this up and running and nice and active. So I fed my starter this morning. Again, like I said, around 7:45 or 8 a.m. And basically what that means when you feed your starter, originally when I started doing research, I was like, what does that even mean? You're basically throwing away a certain amount of what's already there and then replenishing it with a certain amount of water and flour. Within my starter this morning, I basically only kept 100 grams of the starter. Now, I definitely recommend using a scale to measure everything by grams instead of by ounces. That's what I read and that's kind of just like what worked for me. So that's what I did. I used my scale and then I put 100 grams of the starter, 100 grams of water, and then 100 grams of flour. I mixed it all together until it created this kind of like texture consistency, and then I just topped it with this little towel. Now basically what we're doing is it's actually already grown a little bit. Right now it's 9:40 a.m. So what we're looking for is if I fed it, let's say 8 a.m., within 5 hours we need it to double. Again, this is a very active starter. A lot of the reviews on this Etsy shop said this was an amazing starter. Very active. Honestly, within the time that I received it, within 2 days, it was ready to go and ready to make bread. I guess key number one is to just start with a good starter. Hoping that at around noon she'll be ready to go and I can start the next step, which I will walk you through. But I figured I would show you the tools that I'm using and what I read prior to receiving my starter, just so I had enough information and I didn't feel too overwhelmed. When I started reading everything, I will say that I was like, this is a lot. Like, how am I gonna do this? I feel like I'm definitely gonna mess this up. But I feel like because I did brief myself, it did make the process a little bit smoother because I knew what to expect. So this is the flour that I used. This is the salt that I used. I got it on Amazon. And then this is the book that I read. It is a great brief on just getting started and knowing all of the tools and everything that you need. I also got on Amazon this little bowl that was really helpful, and inside the bowl it came with a bunch of stuff, including this whisk, which we'll use for the next step, and then this blade that kind of like marks the sourdough at the end with your own little design and stuff. It's pretty sharp, so it's in this leather container. And then it came with a brush to scrub the actual bowl itself. I will link this whole kit in the description as well in case you want to check it out. It was pretty inexpensive and it did include a lot. This is the kit that I've been using. And then lastly, here are the steps that the Etsy shop sent with the starter. So originally it was just this page introducing, it's a lot of information, but it's actually pretty easy to understand. It's basically introducing how to feed your starter and recovering from its jet lag time in the mail and just getting it up and running. And then once it's ready to start baking is where we refer to this sheet, and it has the recipe on everything. I'm going to be walking you through this recipe. We have to wait a couple more hours before the next step, but I am ready to see how my second time making sourdough bread goes. The first time I did give it to a couple of family members and everyone seemed to loved it. My husband loved it. I loved it. I'm just really excited now that I feel a little more comfortable with it to see how this next batch comes out. Last thing before we move on to step number 2, I am also growing my own microgreens, and I'm doing this so that when I do make my avocado toast, I have as many ingredients as possible that are grown from home. So be sure to subscribe because I will be doing another video soon on how I am growing my own microgreens. It's super easy, super simple, and very affordable. Alright, so it's 12:30 p.m. and our starter is officially ready to go. So this is what it looks like when it's nice and doubled. You can tell it definitely has a lot of life to it. So what we're gonna do is get 45 grams of this starter and put it in this bowl. This is what it looks like right now. Alright, I'm going to actually leave my starter out because once we're done setting this up, I'm going to feed it and then put it back into the fridge so that it's ready for the next time that I want to make sourdough bread. So I'll walk you through that process as well. We're going to put 290 grams of room temperature water in with the starter. Alright, got the water all mixed in, and now I'm going to whisk this together using the tool that I got from my starter kit. I think the biggest part about making sourdough bread is making sure that you have enough time. Now, the process itself is pretty simple from what I learned from the first time. It's all a matter of just making sure, maybe do it on the day if you can work from home, or maybe on the weekend. I'm working from home today, so today was just an ideal day to start the process. I'll actually end up baking this tomorrow. After all of the steps, this recipe is a 2-day recipe. I think most of them are. I think that that's a good tip, is make sure that you start the process when you know you're going to have enough time and you know you're going to be home, and be attentive of the bread and the time. So we've got it all mixed up. It's a very light consistency. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add 7 grams of sea salt and 400 grams of all-purpose flour. So I'm going to start with the sea salt so it kind of just like mixes all together nice and evenly. By the way, I'm not memorizing these steps. I'm just referring back to this piece of paper right next to me. If I would have memorized it within one time of doing this all, I'd be very impressed with myself. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna use our hands, so I'm gonna use my hand, and make shaggy dough. This seems pretty shaggy enough, so I'm gonna clean my hands, and then we're just gonna let this sit. So I'm going to dampen this towel, cover this, and then we're going to let it sit for 1 hour. Now that that is resting, we're going to actually get rid of some of the starter here and then feed it again so I can put it back in the fridge for the next time that I'm ready to make sourdough bread. Same quantities as this morning when we originally fed the starter. We've got 100 grams of the starter. We're going to do 100 grams of water and 100 grams of flour. So when you put it in the fridge, you're going to put the lid on, not the towel. And then I'm just gonna leave the towel in the fridge with Louise because she looks cute like that. So that's pretty much it for this step. I'm just gonna clean up a little bit, and then in about an hour, I'll go ahead and go on to the next step. Alright, so it's been about an hour and we're ready for the next step. I'm gonna uncover this. And basically what we're gonna do now is called a stretch and fold. This is gonna be the first set of 4. So what we do now, we're gonna do every 30 minutes until we repeat the process 4 times. So this is where the first time I did this, I for sure did not do it right. So I definitely wouldn't look at my technique and replicate it. It basically says to sort of push and pull until you begin to feel it relax a little bit. So right now, this is what it looks like, and I'm gonna start to push it until I feel it relax a little bit. And it says to kind of push it against the side of the bowl, right? And this is gonna be the first set, again, of 4. So then now, from what I saw online, now it's a little more relaxed. It says to kind of like grab a piece and stretch it out and then fold it over. And you kind of just like go in a circle doing edge by edge. You stretch and then fold and then stretch and fold. And then it does say to do this for about 1.5 minutes, so it's not for too long. Basically just like to go around the entire piece. Make sure I get all the edges. I'm gonna do the same thing, just cover it, and this time we're gonna wait 30 minutes to perform the second set. Alright, it's about 3:15 and it's time for the last stretch and fold before we let the dough sit for about 8 hours. Now, I live in Miami, so the temperature is really hot here. Depending on the temperature, it may be less or more. You kind of just have to watch the dough rather than the time itself. But yeah, we're gonna do the last stretch and fold now. This is what the dough currently looks like, and it's definitely a lot more, I wanna say, loose when I pull on it for the stretch. It's nice and loose, and then I can pull it over. So I'm gonna do that for about 1.5 minutes, and then we'll let it sit for 8 hours.
8 hours later.
Dough has been sitting in the fridge overnight, I want to say for about 13, maybe 14 hours, and it is ready to bake. We're going to preheat it in the oven with the pot inside. We're preheating it to 475 degrees. In the meantime, while that is preheating, I'm going to get some parchment paper and put the dough on the parchment paper so that it's ready to go in the pot. Last night, after the, I want to say about 6 to 7 hour period of it resting, is when I did the pre-shaping and then the full shaping before putting it in the fridge. Now, I will say that my technique with the pre-shaping and the shaping is definitely a work in progress, so if you're looking at my technique, definitely don't take note on that because I probably did everything wrong, but it still looks pretty good. It is more of a circle shape than I thought it was going to be last night. It wasn't so much of a circle, but I guess because it's been in this bowl overnight, it has kind of molded out into a circle. So I'm happy about that, and I'm really excited to see how this is going to taste. So all I'm going to do in order to put it on the parchment paper is put the parchment paper over the bowl and then flip the bowl over like this. And then I did put flour on the bowl before putting the dough inside, and that helps with it non-sticking so that when you put it on, it goes off pretty seamlessly. so we've let the bread sit for more than 2 hours, and now that it's nice and cool, it's ready to be cut and served. So I'm not going to be eating this right now. I'm taking it to my parents' house for dinner tonight, so I won't do a taste test, but it does look delicious. I am going to cut it now and see how fluffy it is on the inside. But if you liked this video and you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more health and Pilates related videos. That's all from me for now, and I will see you next time. Bye! Okay, just kidding. I did take out a slice so that I can have a little bite because it looks so delicious, and I was packing it up in this little baggie and I couldn't help but try it. So we're gonna try it together. Let's see how this came out. That's really good.